Okay. Anyways, hello, my name is Vincent Faney, or Faini, as we were just discussing, and I am the host of the new show, Vinsanity Unplugged, in search of game changers. My passion, my job is to go out into the community and find people in various walks of life, whether they're musicians, athletes, scientists, and in today, in this case, politicians or candidates running for office who promise to be game changers. I'm looking for people who are way ahead of the curve. People, I appreciate people who are systems type of thinkers, take a systems approach to life. So with me today is Mr. Court Boice, and you're running for Congress, is that correct?
Oregon's 4th District, yes sir, and thanks for the invitation and opportunity to listen to your, or to reach out to your viewers.
Oh great, yeah, I just saw the interview with you and Joe, and I really enjoyed the interview, the interplay between you. I just thought that all the candidates deserved a second exposure. So
I enjoyed that very much. Joe and I are the same generation, of course.
Yes.
So are you and I.
Yeah. So, and you guys, both of you guys are real smart and educated, and that's why we had a good time in the control room listening to both of you. So anyways, tell us about yourself. Where you're from, you know, what you're about, your education, you know, what got you inspired. Did you always think, did you dream of becoming a congressman one day?
Oh, no, not that. But that's it. That's interesting. You phrase it that way. You know, my story, I was right at the end of the Vietnam era, that generation. And so in May of 1971, I spent a week with Congressman John Dellenbach in his home in Washington, D.C. And May of 1972, my draft number was 7. And so in my family, there's no discussion. You're going. You're going to serve your country.
You were what, 8,
17.
17, okay.
Yeah. And so I went into some bad behavior and you know, but I was ready. And July 1st of 1972, President Nixon abolished the draft.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
September, I turned 18. Right. So my life was on Rogue River, where I was able to, every day of the summer, Mr. Fiani, to basically take 30, 40 people upriver all the way into the Rogue Wilderness. It was an enchanted life, and so Oregon has been very, very good to me. I ultimately owned a lodge called Paradise Lodge for years. And into what
year? When did you get rid of that?
Oh gosh, 2005. Sold to some good friends. Very hard work. You know, it was accessible only by boat. So you had a lot of logistical problems. You had to be, you had to have an improvising spirit. I was the head gardener, the head marketer, you know, the first one to show up for work, the last one to leave, and the last one to get paid. But it was in this sacred part of Oregon, a true wilderness area. Other than we were grandfathered in, before we bought it, the folks, the previous owners, before it became a wild river and a wilderness area, 2 different sections. I actually took Mark Hatfield, the senator up then in those days, and it was just a wild river section. And then in the mid-'80s, he passed legislation which made it a wilderness area. And they let us stay in that that section. But it's a special part of Oregon. So this is my time to give back, or at least make an honest effort to offer myself to the citizens. I'm applying for employment.
So back then, when you were in that wilderness, I mean, it's still pretty wild, right? I mean, compared to the rest of Oregon, I mean, you still have to get in by boat, right?
It's very rugged. Yes, everything goes in by boat. And
mail, everything, right?
Jet boats, food, beds, refrigerators, lumber, families. We have a lot of the Jerry's people that come up and stay, and of course, it's the second most regulated rafting river in the country, the Road Wild section, the roadless area. And so one of my claims to fame was just being involved with a place called Blossom Bar. Our lodge is a mile down from there. And so I made a lot of friends by rescues into that very, very rugged area.
Okay, so is it a lot like, you ever see the TV show Northern Exposure?
You know, I'm not familiar with that, but it's a lot of steep terrain, and so very rugged country. Part of the Kalmiopsis Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest, and so it is just that. It is wild, unique. It's the most unique national forest in the continental United States.
I've always wanted to go and check. I never got around to it, but I wanted to.
Well, thanks to this, I can say a plug. Despite the fire we had, that section is good to go, and of course, my job is to try and keep the fires contained to the sections they've been, and hopefully just have natural burns and not the mega fires that we experience. So, yeah, we have to protect the Rogue River. I mean, it's again, it's just an incredibly sacred, beautiful area,
Yeah.
and it's something that, because of the jet boats and because of the rafts and the trail, it's something that everybody, depending on their preference on how to see it, there's a lot of different options there.
So I just imagine, just from living down there and working so close to nature, that you would be really keen on preserving certain aspects of the environment, like the salmon. Is there salmon fishing there in that area? Is there steelhead or what?
And that's really, I don't think I've had that question for a year and a half now, but it's really an excellent question, because Oroga is famous for jet boats and whitewater rafting, great scenery, wildlife, certainly the waterfalls. It had the Oroga, the 210 miles, when it leaves Crater Lake, it has tremendous contrast in scenery, you know, as it goes through the Medford area, Grants Pass, and then down into the canyon. And so in that contrast, it drops a lot. And so, but what it's most famous for is not even salmon fishing, it's steelhead.
Steelhead, okay.
Yes, the ocean trout that comes in,
Yeah.
and if you talk to anglers, fishermen, most of them would tell you, yeah, I'd rather catch a 2-pound steelhead than a 20-pound salmon, but thank goodness Oroga is famous for both. And so I run with a lot of people that really are tuned into protecting that resource.
Okay.
And of course that means protect the watershed. That means limit, you know, really be on duty for against and aware of the fire danger, and especially the mega fires, sure.
So how would you go, what sort of, you know, one of the things you'd be doing as a congressman is to protect a lot of the, old growth forests, and then ensure that we have business by wood extraction, lumber extraction in proper areas? I mean, what's your view on that? Somebody was asking me what your view would be.
Another very good question. Between Oregon and Washington, just for example, we have almost 7 million acres in nationally designated wilderness area. And even the timber harvest people that I know, they're all for that. You know, the guys that get up and cut trees, they're there at daylight and they watch out for their buddies, and they, you know, it's really a proven way of managing the forest. But they respect, appreciate, and want to fiercely protect the wilderness, as we all do.
Right.
Do we need more? That's debatable. I'm not against that. What I am against is Oregon has a tremendous resource advantage that no other state in this country has. The key word we learned as kids, renewable. Renewable. And that goes for our ocean, Mr. Fiani, and it goes for certainly national forests. The best example I can give you, I serve on the Association of ONC County Board of Directors, and it's really a basic number. Right now, within the BLM lands, the counties are able, and that's of course how they pay for their rural areas, got to have law enforcement, solid.
Yes.
Public safety is our number one, as you well know, is our number one public official responsibility.
Okay.
Number 2 is schools, and then number 3 is roads. And then just within the small rural counties, well, not all are small, but you know, rural counties in general, it's a struggle, because that money comes back from the BLM and the Forest Service through timber contracts. Of course, through the timber contracts, that's how they reforest and rehabilitate after logging for the future generations, in this case after the fires as well. But in those 18 ONC counties, my grandfather actually was a county commissioner, Curry County, a little corner of Oregon, we're so proud of, even though we just lost 1/5 of it, the mega fire, the Chetco Bar fire. He helped negotiate in 1938 as a county commissioner when the government come in and started basically corralling the land and taking it under national ownership.
Oh, federal government.
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes, which was controversial in those days. But the commissioners felt like they negotiated a very responsible contract with the BLM, and eventually it became federal law. And that contract was for 500 million board feet a year. Excuse me, in those 18 counties.
Right.
And basically, the BLM has not allowed that, even though it's under congressional law, has not allowed that much harvest. And so it's about 230 million, if you average the last few years, board feet. That's not very much. What is happening in Oregon, especially in Oregon, but other western states, is that it's growing. And this is a figure that you can count as very valid. It's growing by 1.2 billion board feet. So we're not even able to harvest 1/4. The irony of that is, and what it's doing to the small counties is that we're not managing our forests well. And so it's either going to earn for us through a very good thinning system, and it's all second growth, and you know, I don't know, most of the logs can't even take old growth anymore, anything more. There's one mill in Roseburg, Herbert's, I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it can take 28 inch diameter trees. That's about it.
So they're
Maybe
tooled to
32.
take smaller diameter trees. Okay.
And that market has developed. Obviously, we don't thank God don't do the same forced practices we did when my grandfather, even my father, was logging in the
taking the
60s.
biggest trees back then, right?
Yeah, and we didn't know better.
Yeah.
But that was why the wilderness areas in the 70s, 80s, the National Northwest Forest Plan, which is 24 years old, needs to be revised, and I think I've lived it, so I think I've got some, hopefully some expertise in that area.
Right.
But because we're letting it grow, Oregon, with this incredible advantage through this natural resource, and again in our ocean too, we need to develop over time, and I think as a congressional rep, this is what I can assist with. That land, it may take 10 years, may take 15 years, needs to be under state control.
Okay.
And a lot of people go, they're going to log national parks. Please.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. That's not what the timber industry is talking about. But the states need, and one of the reasons I really kind of hold dear to that concept is because living that fire, the $78 million it cost to fight it, and we've asked Senators Wyden and Merkley for a congressional investigation because we are convinced, and we're trying to find the facts, but the facts aren't available.
Or they're not being made available, or
no.
Okay.
No, you have to go through the FOIA request, and nobody's held accountable in the federal government.
I have first-hand experience with that, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, and so 20 years from now, they don't have to be accountable, but they still have their incredible pensions.
Right.
And my people are breathing smoke.
Yeah.
The average age in my county is 56. So those folks are affected by that. I was in it for 20 days. And it didn't seem to bother me. Maybe I'll know different 20 years from now.
Right.
But I felt horrible for the people that were exposed and could not handle that level of. I mean, it was a black hazard. Severe.
So you're talking about going in and just kind of doing maintenance and getting the underbrush out, or
yes,
doing
teach kids how to run a
burns?
chainsaw. Teach kids how to build a trail. Teach kids the difference between a white fir and a Doug fir.
Okay.
But I've lived that. I've logged myself over the years, being on the river. When you're in a rural area like that, you do what you have to do to make ends meet.
Sure.
And the first 30 years, I was never not signing a paycheck. So I made a lot of friends. Some of my best campaign people right now are employees from 20 years ago.
Right.
It's pretty humbling, and it's darn gratifying. But the states. The reason I started to mention the Oregon Department of Forestry there, they pushed during that fire to be more effective. Technically, you can argue with the county elected officials have the ultimate authority, the sheriff, with the Forest Service. The plug I want to give, and this is straight from the heart almost, is that if it wasn't for the Oregon Department of Forestry, I believe we would have lost Brookings.
Really?
And that's quite a statement, I understand, but I was there every day for months.
Yeah.
And, sir, that fire went 18 miles. It originally started 23 miles from Brookings, straight east. And it went 18 miles. When the winds kicked up on the 17th of August, you may recall, when the winds kicked up, it went 18 miles in less than about 71 hours.
Whoa.
So it got within 4.9 miles, the perimeter of Brookings. And it was just, there was a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
That fire took a right angle.
Yeah.
And it headed north. It's what they call the Chetco effect, the winds that we're familiar with.
Right.
And so it was just an absolute miracle. I'm not saying that people would have died and all the house would have burned up. We don't know.
Yeah.
But we do know that the rate it was going. Now we have in this system, we have in that we lost 16,000 acres of private timber, which was included in the 192. So that 174, 5, whatever, they're going to let us harvest 2.5 acres. So excuse me, 2.5%, or about 4,000 acres.
Okay.
And it's got the local folks up down there just absolutely in an uproar, because these aren't people that are anti-government or anxious to point a finger at the Forest Service or whatever. They're heartbroken. Sure. And they're still processing the smoke and the loss. This is our backyard. Yeah. My point is, the reason I'm getting criticized, some of my opponents, that I've only been a commissioner for a year and 5 months, whatever it is, that I'm there's nothing opportunist about me. I live the fire. I got a responsibility here. Right. And if I can simply sound the alarm on what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
From the very beginning of no response, not enough responsible timber contracts, money coming back to the county,
right,
to where we're saying, you've already learned from the Biscuit Fire in 2003, the Silver Fire in 1988, and now this is what they're calling this third Biscuit Fire. It's reburning. We're squandering years of reburn. So what's happening is this gorgeous wilderness that we had, that we're all proud of, the Kalmiopsis Wilderness, part of the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest. What's happened in this reburn, the worst thing, by not doing there's two worst things. the two things are, number one, because we're not harvesting, we don't have the money for rehabilitation for the next generations. And that's just beyond, I don't know what word to describe. I almost want to say criminal, because this could have been prevented, and it would have stopped.
How would you have prevented it? What would you recommend to prevent that?
Those logging contracts, building roads, you know,
Okay.
sure, you want
So you can get in there.
Yes, you want a section you don't want roads, absolutely.
Sure.
But they're actually decommissioning roads, you know. So we spend thousands of dollars towards the visitor aspect of this gorgeous part of Oregon, this gorgeous part of the U.S. of A.
Right.
And then we burn out. We lock off the roads. You know, it's got to all be trails. So I can't take my grandkids, you know, or when you come down. And then the second aspect is that's really scary for the people down there and the foresters on both sides. They're starting to figure out. Not only did we incinerate millions of wildlife,
Right.
because they don't have the instincts to run from a mega fire.
Right.
A normal fire that's going in one direction, you know, they generally have the instincts to know where to go. But in a fire that moves that fast and winds that go every direction, they just get burned alive.
Yeah.
And so this is the whole spotted owl argument. It's the entire, you know, we're losing our deer population.
Right.
You know, in Oregon. And it's very little of that's to do with hunting. It's vehicular, it's disease, it's fire, it's predators. You know, we have twice the number of cougar in my county that we should the balance can sustain.
Right.
I'm getting off a little bit here.
Yeah.
But what's happened with the deer population going down? They'll eat 7 pounds of grass and brush a day, and elk will eat 30 pounds.
Right.
That's the killing
Yeah.
for the fire. So not only we're out of deer, we've got all these trees that are, each one is a stick of dynamite now. We're talking thousands. And so we're saying, hey, hey everybody, we need to be ready really early this time.
Right.
So and because of some of that area is burned 3 times now, we're turning into, and this is really the ecological balance that's been destroyed by not harvesting properly and not thinning properly, is we're turning into a hardwood forest down there. Which is oaks, which is a sacred tree, but you know, it's mostly scrub oak that comes back the first 20, 30, 40 years. It's madronis, manzanita. They choke out the first seedlings.
Oh.
And so we're going from an evergreen forest, which that corner of Oregon is most famous for, to a hardwood forest. And so, I mean, I could talk forever on this, but whatever else you want to talk about or ask about.
Well, I was interested that, well, one, you do have to take care of, it sounds like you're really big on taking care of the old growth forests and then managing in a much more effective way the forest where you extract and a certain amount of lumber and keep jobs and so forth. So what are the issues that are you looking to take care of? What are some key projects that you're going to be working on if you get into Congress?
You know, it may sound like I'm trying to be a little bit catchy or trendy or whatever, but I really think, you know, everybody, is this a red state or is this a blue state? I want it to be a green state, and that's the economy. There's an economic boom apparently that's coming. And Oregon needs to be very pro-business. Those are the sacred folks that, those are the folks that create and maintain the sacred jobs that keep us all going, so we can keep our middle class, so that we can, the best way to improve the homeless situation is to have a demand for labor. If you have a demand for labor, what happens?
More people working, right?
Yes, and the wages go up. There's competition for the worker.
Right.
So that helps everybody at all levels, and I think it'll help in the housing issues. It's just not a Lane County issue, the lack of housing. Boy, it's really hitting us down. Oh, it is. Yeah. And the homeless is all over. And I'm seeing, since I've been on this trail, I'm really, in the smoke that you folks dealt with here, and I was up here a couple times after the fire, and so talked to a lot of different people, well, several times, but I think that urban Oregon is starting to figure out, okay, we're going to go to the coast, but we want it to be a healthy part of the coast. We understand that it can't just be tourism. If those schools are healthy, if their culture is solid, right. If they have good law enforcement, me and my wife or my family, whatever, we're going to the coast, and we're going to be in a secure, safe area. We know the Oregon coast has something that nobody else has. Yeah. You know, the ports are magnificent, in especially this district. But that's all resource-based. That doesn't mean you squander it. You know? Right. And you said it just a minute ago, to protect the old growth. Who doesn't want to do that? I mean, I mean, the facts are so overwhelming that we didn't know 40 years ago, and yet we still can accomplish that just by wise. And that's where the local people got to become involved. I mean, this firefighting thing is. Sorry to bring it back to that again, but it's become a huge business, and it's where people. I mean, we're looking at. Helicopters standing by getting paid full, you know, 3 and 4 at a time, day after day. And we're saying, wait, the fires, you know, sick them, you know? And the Oregon Department of Forestry is going, yeah, get on it, you know? I mean, sorry, my volume went up there, but it's pretty passionate, you know, and the Oregon Department of Forestry, basically, their success rate, if you go the last 3 seasons in particular, they keep 90% of the fires under 10 acres. Okay. I mean, that's a remarkable record. Whether you are Republican or Democrat or Green Party, whatever, we all need to appreciate that, get them the funds they need, get them the support they need, the recognition, and I mean, they're leading the Western U.S. in a lot of categories. Right. And so, you know, one of the things I noticed, you know, you got a lot of people who. With the Republican Democrats, a lot of people think, well, you know, the Republicans are all the good guys, or they're all evil. It's no gray area. And other people say the Democrats. And one thing I notice is 90% of the issues that we're faced with that are necessary to solve, to take care of, is we all share. Nobody would disagree and say, well, you know, we shouldn't help the homeless. Nobody would say we shouldn't help the homeless. They would say, oh, we got to help the homeless for a variety of reasons. We got to create jobs. We got to have better schools, better education. And so, you know, as long as we kept away certain hot button issues, it seems like everybody agrees 90% of the stuff. They agree on 90% of the things we need to take care of. I don't know if I kind of rambling a little bit. You understand? No, you're not rambling at all. But the thing that I've talked to some candidates who go, yeah, it sounds like we're all on the same page about what needs to be done. The thing is like we differ on how it needs to be done. And so my interest is like, how would you attack a lot of these issues? You know, the United States is the greatest country that ever existed. You know, and that started with the patriots that were so loyal to their country that they would die for the country. And you see that in the vets, you know, and it comes back to the career politician thing. You know, it's 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Give me 3 terms, maybe 4, you know, 6 or 8 years. Right. And, you know, the president, why did our founding fathers insist that the president can only be 2 terms? You know, it's just like the military. You know, the wise generals, they'll rotate their lieutenants and captains, and you know, because they know you can get stale. Yeah. And so our founding fathers had that wisdom, but somehow over time the Senate thing and the congressional thing has changed to where I understand the congressmen should be closest to the people, but they've got in a system where it's 365 days a year where they're campaigning. And I look at some of these guys and some of the records, and I'm not saying it's just Oregon or it's specific to Oregon, because I don't want to be negative here whatsoever, but it's how much money they got for each project. And I'm looking at the next generation, which I have 8 grandkids, and 9th one on the way. Then I'm looking at this debt, and I know it can't be sustained. You can't just keep growing that debt. Anybody who's been in business understands basic arithmetic. You know, it's the kids. I mean, I was a kid till I was 30, so I'm not being disrespectful whatsoever. But they're starting to figure it out. They're starting to see that this debt cannot continue on. And if we could just at least stop the rate of growth, and the government is expanding so much, and the founding fathers, as you know, knew this well, and that was too much government is anarchy. Not enough government, or excuse me, not enough government is anarchy, and too much government is tyranny. And so, you know, that's how they come up with the Bill of Rights. And basically, it was a republic, representative government. That I hire you to bust your fanny for me. And if you don't do the job, you're coming out. Well, you know, 80% of the congressional people are re-elected, even though they have a 18% approval rating. So it's hard to square all that with people. I mean, it is a popularity contest, and so the Founding Fathers knew that the Bill of Rights was basically, these 10 guys over here can't tell this 9 over here how to conduct their lives. And so, you know, and then they come up with the Fourth Amendment, which is the unreasonable search and seizure. Because why did they come up with that? Because the British were kicking their doors in the middle of the night and terrorizing their families, their children, you know?
Yeah, I hate to see that come back.
Well, I'm not saying that, but it is, you see a lot of weaponizing of different agencies, like the BLM, and you know, people, you know, they don't understand that. They're getting a little nervous. So back to your question of how do we, I still think you can really love people, be a fighter. You know, I got nothing to lose. You know, my country's important to me, and it's important to my children. My grandparents and parents left me an unbelievable country. I mean, this life I accomplished a lot in my life. None of which I can take credit for. And I'm as serious as I can be. It's because I had hardworking parents, the grace of God, and a kid who grew up in the United States of America. I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't work hard. But there's nothing like it in the world. And so back to how do I persuade the other side? As it looks like our country's at a crossroads. We're looking at what is the appeal to socialism. Bernie Sanders. And everywhere we look historically, that's never worked. It's not worked. You know, for a short period of time, you might have a Canada, you know, or socialized medicine there. I mean, there are some things that you can study and maybe implement. You know, China has got a system that is mixed a little bit with capitalism, and you know, but it's still the central planning, and the central planning takes away the incentive from the people, and it takes away the individual liberty. And so, as government expands, I mean, you see it historically. I mean, there's just no denying. It takes the wealth, it takes the liberty, and it takes the prosperity. So the limited government, the free market, and the individual liberty, I mean, that's how you get that and maintain that prosperity. And we're not teaching that in our schools anymore. And so we need to understand history. I bring it back to that. You have to have people skills. If you really love people, then they're going to listen to you. And if you listen, you have to be a better listener than a talker. And you know, Washington's a pretty dark place. And it is. There's no incentive to the perks are. I'm not going to take the retirement. You know. And people say what? Well, I think I'm stealing from the next generation. So.
Well, you know, it's apparent to me, being over 60 decades, working into my 60th decade, that we need to get a change of leadership. It doesn't matter to me whether all the people there or most of them are genuinely nice and honest people. It's just the fact is things are accelerating into a bad way unless we have a new blood, I think, and people who could just take charge and take a systems approach to let's get her done kind of attitude. And in a sense, this is my opinion, I'm sophisticated when it comes to politics. When you look at capitalism and you look at socialism and you look at communism, none of those things have to be part of the government plan. Or, you know, I mean, I'm a socialist, I'm a capitalist, and I'm a communist. So my immediate family, the people I love, I'll share all my stuff. That's communism. Here, I'll share what I have here. Out in the community, I take some of my resources or food or this and that, and I say, well, let me help you. Let me give you some aid. That's socialism. I'm not getting paid for that, right? No tax dollars are being wasted.
You're a good citizen.
Well, no tax dollars are, but I'm not saying that what the government should do this. I'm not saying the government shouldn't do things, but I'd hate to think that as Americans we're over-relying on the government to take care of everything. And it doesn't work well because money, just in a business sense, just leaks out. You know, it's like putting and a dam. And when it comes to capitalism, you know, it's just people that has a bad word. And it's just like, okay, if you're not committing fraud or lying or whatever, or polluting the environment, I have a service, a personal trainer. Here's my service, you pay me this much. That is capitalism. What's wrong with that? You just take a bigger business or whatever. So capitalism has a weird negative term to a lot of people. But we do need to build, as you say, I think, businesses. We got to be business friendly. And so I like the idea where government's going to try to help us up to a point, but we got to find some way of encouraging each other to be self-reliant instead of like sucking up all the resources.
Self-reliant, individual responsibility. I mean, my dad come from a family of 12 children. 12. He was second youngest.
Okay.
And every one of those 12 kids turned out to be very productive.
Okay.
And self-reliant and neighbor-oriented. You know, in those days, my grandfather and the whole family raised hogs and had a huge garden, huge orchard. And somebody asked him once, well, why don't you have cows? You have all this room. And he was a logger too, and then later a county commissioner. But they asked him, why don't you have cows? Well, the neighbors have cows. I don't need them.
There you go.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was the attitude. All of his children were born right before, during, and after the Depression. You know, 12 kids in 20 and a half years. So it was a tremendous family. But the point is that that rugged individualism that took everything. And you know, they thrived under the pressure. They came together under the hard times, and you know, they lived. They were Americans.
Right,
you know?
right.
So you know, I think on capitalism and the socialism argument, when greed gets involved, that'll turn people off to the capitalistic system, and so that comes back to just. What we teach our kids, you know, and from the very beginning, trying to keep families together. The old, you know, some people don't like the term anymore, traditional values, but it is thrift, it is hard work, you know, it is the golden rule. You know, it's those things that really make for good citizens, and I think we need to remind them why we have this unbelievable quality of life. You know, the capitalist system is a miracle of McDonald's, miracle of Microsoft.
Right.
Never would have happened under China.
No.
Okay?
In fact, China was dying if they didn't inject a lot of capitalism. Their economy is, you know, is, from what I've read, anyways, they were kind of just dying. And then Mao, he died, and somebody said, hey, they started promoting business, make money, and now China's, well, they're doing better.
Yeah, and see the bureaucracy that gets involved, and you said it just a minute ago when all the different programs. I mean, it's the fourth branch of government now. Some people believe because they have so much power, they get paid so much money. They're never held accountable, almost never. I mean, you saw that in the IRS issues 2 or 3 years ago. You see it at the Department of Justice right now. That are ignoring the separation of powers. Some of the judges, I challenge. You know, they're not elected officials. Some of them are, you know, but some of them are appointed. And so, you know, seeing the president, like him or not, trying to protect the country. And be very careful about who we let into our borders. Europe is 2 years ahead of us, and you see the mess they're in Sweden, in Germany.
They're 2 years ahead of us.
Well, they started letting they because they don't have an ocean separating. I mean, a lot of the immigrants come in, and I'm going to be real frank.
Sure.
They're not cultures. Some of them, they respect women. I mean, they're not raised that way. I mean, you see it in the MS-13 coming from Honduras, which might be Guatemala, excuse me. Anyway, you see that coming from Yemen, some of those countries. You know, we're a sanctuary country, and we have made it available, and it's been a wonderful thing. And that melting pot has worked. But what has been the uniting factor in that whole thing? It has been, we love America. We will sacrifice for our country. It is nationalism. It is, I mean, the vets. I mean, the politicians. If the politicians in this country had the level of self-sacrifice and the level of duty that the veterans have.
Right.
And that's why I'm so sensitive to the Vietnam veterans, because I could have been one of them so easy.
Yeah.
And so this is my time and responsibility to give back. But look what they sacrificed. You know, the story of a point man went out in the middle of the night to draw fire, so his 100 guys, the platoon behind him, could figure out where the enemies were.
Right.
Might live through it or might not.
Right.
I mean, that kind of courage, I mean, it's just, and so not everybody's wired to be military. I understand that, of course, but if we could tell in more detailed terms what that guy did, what those guys did in Vietnam, in World War II, what they sacrificed to our young men. You know, it's not going to be young women out there. Hopefully, I mean, they have a place in the military and they're as tough as any man. But in that sense, I mean, in the Vietnam era, it wouldn't have made sense, you know, because they would step on a mine, anything, and it was just crushing. But so, yeah, they'd draw the fire. But if our young men knew that's the kind of hearts they had and the kind of commitment they had, it's just amazing.
Well, you know, to be, you get these Vietnam vets, you get to any veteran, anybody who goes in the military, anybody who goes through the training, they're taught that, you know, you either sacrifice and discipline yourself and put out, lead by example, or you just go off into some MOS where you just basically park your butt under a shade tree and do nothing. I don't know, but those aren't the people that become the leaders or the generals, thankfully. You look at yourself and other people who've operated businesses, you know, all your life. You're the one who gets up first and goes to work first, leaves last, you know, gets paid last. Build the business. That's a lot of strategy, a lot of figuring things out from many different directions and implementing them. So that's a lot of sacrifice. That's a lot of discipline. You know, I don't care if that would make you a great congressman or not. That right there is people don't give enough credit to a lot of our businessmen, people who create small businesses and build them into big businesses and so forth. So that kind of thinking, when I see people who go into office who have that kind of thinking, I did this in the military, or, you know, I would have done that in the military, I did this in business, I did this in firefighting, and now I'm going to do this when I run for office. And I think that's what a lot of us are hungering for, is we're looking for leaders who won't just go in and, you know, kind of keep a chair warm and just, you know, basically point to everybody else what they should be doing. Kind of like to have our leaders be able to, you know, walk their talk. And so I see a lot of the candidates running recently, and I've been talking quite a bit with them. I've been reading some of the books they've written, and I'm like, well, you know, they talk a good game, and they certainly proven that in their past careers and lives. So that's what you're saying is, you know, we got to get in there and roll our sleeves up and work together, and we all need to sacrifice for this country, because our coming generations, what's going to happen to them unless we change things? Well, you see the trend.
It is a trend.
Yeah, and it's not scary. A good trend unless you change it.
No, and so it's like one guy told me once, he said, you know, on the forest management, and he was a timber feller his entire life, loved the outdoors, you know, hunter, I mean, a typical Oregon, you know, traditional guy. And he was so heartbroken by this fire, because he has 11 grandkids, and he says, this is what we're leaving them, you know, and we don't have the money to fix it. And what is it going to be like when we're long gone? We've got to fight this, you know. And so he says, you better run for Congress. And I go, yeah, yeah, you crazy son of a gun. And so that was 5 months ago, 6 months ago, here I is.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and I think you just really said it well, and it reminded me of something that we've had two major waves in our country. The first one, as you know, was the American Revolution. And that got us the individual liberty and the freedom and as we said, the Bill of Rights, and an incredible system of government that ultimately, over 240 years, 45 years, brought us the greatest medical, the greatest transportation, the greatest communication. You know, the United States of America, with all of its faults, has never taken 1 square inch of land from another country in those 245 years. You know, well, look what we did for Germany and Japan, and should have. My father was one of the first American GIs into Nagasaki 31 days, 32 days after the bombs were dropped. And it was, I mean, the kids, the stories he would tell us when we were kids, what did the peasants think? Because of the Philippines, the Bataan Death March, as horrible as they were to our soldiers, unspeakable torture, they were running for the hills thinking the Americans were going to do unimaginable things.
Right.
Of course, the American GIs were the exact opposite. You know, give them gum and stuff out of their ration kits. And so growing up as kids, I think I told this story to Joe, I don't remember, but as kids we had to learn to speak Japanese.
Right, yeah.
The count to 10. So that always kind of stayed with me. But the second wave, of course, was the Civil War. You know, the conservatives, the Christians, they couldn't stomach the slavery anymore. And so it took a long time. You know, the days of even in England with all the tyranny and the poverty and I mean, the unimaginable torture, you know. And so we got that done. Right. And we ultimately became, we were slowly becoming united. So now I think the third wave, and this may be overstated, I don't know, but it's what I believe. I think the third wave is to, it's either going to be socialism or it's going to be the American system, the American dream. And so all I can do is talk about that. Yeah. All I can do is remind people of history. And I think the standard of living will be much higher if we go that route. I don't want to be like Venezuela. I sure as heck don't want to be like North Korea, yeah. Oh my gosh, you know, and then the cultures and I mean all over the world that we are, you know, that we are embarrassed by and our heart aches for the little children and so, but we got an opportunity here. We really do, and it's going to have to be leaders at the national level that, as you said, you know, I think I told somebody earlier today, I really believe in the preferred risk. I've got so many people that if preferred risk, least likely to be corrupted. Okay. You know, I'm not saying everybody back there is corrupted, not by a long shot. But if you stay in power too long and you become a millionaire, it is going to change your day-to-day existence. Sure. And so I got people that hold me accountable, and I mean every walk of life, every race, men, women, you know, all of the above. I don't want to let them down.
Do you believe?
Take me or leave me, but that's you know.
Do you believe in like a mixed economy? You know, like some people, for instance, I've been talking to some of the homeless advocates. I know what it's like to be homeless myself when I first got out of the Marines. And
you were a Marine?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. I actually believe it or not. I was given the choice from my parents because I was kind of girl crazy and became hyperactive, and I had
bet you're a dang good Marine.
That's, you know, well, I don't know. I didn't, you know, people say thank you for your service, and I got to say, you know, the only action I saw was in bar rooms, you know, but basically we all
had those periods, didn't
we? I actually, at first, my parents pressured me, said it's either reform school or Marines. And so I was like, no, I'm going to move out, and I'm going to go live at the Y down in Norristown. I'm going to just, you know, and use the community showers and live, because I had a job, you know, at 16. And then they said, well, at least listen to the recruiter. And I listened to the recruiter, and he was painting images of heroism, and I saw the Audie Murphy movies and John Wayne, and I'm going to fight the insidious commie threat, you know, because you know all that talk back then. And the draft had just ended prior to me deciding, okay, I'm going to join. So my parents basically.
You were exactly 1 year behind me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So they made me my recruiter and my parents. It's considered fraud nowadays, but they made me a year older because I was too young to actually go in. So I went in when I was 16. And so I just basically, I'm going to go and fight it. I thought I'd be Jason Bourne or James Bond, or, you know. And so anyways, I went in to fight, and they said, we'll send you over the NOM and so forth. And I was blind as a bat. I couldn't even pass legally the eye test for the driver's license. And so,
but you didn't tell them, did you?
Well, they took my eye test. I actually, in Pennsylvania at the time, you had people who could say, okay, go in and take the eye. Yeah, I had somebody take the eye test for me. And so it was close, it was marginal. You know, I had those big Hubble telescope lenses on my face, you know, back then, those Coke bottles. And so when I went to the Marines, they checked out down the induction center, they checked out my hearing. My hearing was phenomenal because I guess because I was blind. And they're like, man, we never seen ears like this. And
typical Italian.
Yeah, so let's check out your eyes. And then right away, okay, take off your glasses, put them right back on. You're too blind. Oh, no wonder you got good ears. You're blind as a bat. We can't let you in. So I was begging them, please, 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 please. And so they let me in. And so I passed boot camp, and it was a good experience for me. I had mixed feelings, you know, good experience. But yeah, I didn't really serve. I just went in and
Yeah, but see, everybody goes in, to me, everybody goes into the service as a point man.
Yeah.
Because they don't know one day or the next where they're going to be called, where they're going to have to go into the darkness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that takes unbelievable courage. I believe I have that kind of courage, but you don't know until you actually get a uniform on and you're ready to go wherever you're told to go. So my hat is off. Anybody that went in had that.
Well, I went into, I had supposedly a guarantee on my MOS, so I was supposed to, my first choice was recon, because I thought that would make me into a super Boy Scout. You know, I wanted to be a super Boy Scout.
Unbelievable training.
Yeah, I mean, that's physical training I really like. I just eat that stuff up.
Sure.
And the second choice is aviational operations, which was go to school in Memphis to be a helicopter mechanic and kind of test fly them. And I'm just thinking, oh, they're going to make me into like Chuck Yeager or something. You know? And anyways, it's a good thing I got Hawk missiles instead. And I guess being blind as I was, it was a good thing I didn't go into recon or anything like that.
So you wear contacts now?
No, I got cataracts kind of early in my life.
For gosh sake.
And so I'm a Borg now. I got artificial lenses, so.
Didn't ruin your hearing, did it?
No. Only when I choose not to listen. No, anyways, so the whole thing is, where do we go from here? Because we go, I mean, what are you going to do? Where are you going to take us? You know, or you have all these issues, and that you know that we need jobs, we need affordable housing, we need to take care of the homeless. And I went off on a tangent. What I was going to say was a mixed economy thing. On one hand, I want to see people being taken care of, but I don't want them to become helpless. And sometimes when you just give people and put them on programs and pay them, it doesn't teach them self-reliancy, and I think that they lose their dignity.
Well, famous saying, the success of welfare shouldn't be how many are on welfare, but how many slowly come off of it.
Right.
And you know, I think I'm a little guilty of thinking that, you know, 10, 12 years ago, people just don't want to work. Yeah. You know, I don't think that necessarily anymore. Yeah. Because there's a drug culture. Right. Substance abuse. Mm-hmm. And I mean, goodness, if you want to look at marijuana right now, I mean, we're basically telling our kids it's okay to be high. Yeah. And, you know, 1 out of 5, well, closer stats are 1 out of 6 become addicted. So down the road, those people are not going to be, you know, a lot of people can handle marijuana, as you know. I mean, who cares about a guy on his back porch after work? Or then there's certainly some medical aspects of that. But I think back to medical aspects that are proven and pretty powerfully in a really positive way. But you look back on what you just said on how do we get people to have that incentive. I mean, there's a shortage of workers in a lot of states right now. Yeah. And the companies are saying, my goodness, how did we get here? We have this great economic opportunity to really be profitable and put people to work and grow our company and invest money, and we can't find workers. And you know, it's a lot of it is you know, just a lack of incentive. It was one single parent homes. It's a breakdown in some schools. Right. It's a breakdown in the judicial system. We got to deal with these issues. To answer your question, I think it's just, I got a lot of optimism. I mean, I can identify the problems and got a lot of help in that area. Certainly have a lot of help in coming up with solutions. But there has to be a real commitment to work on those and overcome. And yeah, I think the first thing you do, back to the green economy, the green forest, not the charcoal. Right. And even on the marijuana issue, the green part of on my stance is, if you're a legal commercial grower, we're going to support you. Okay. You've got to cross the T's and dot the I's.
Okay. What do you think about state
But if you're
rights?
an illegal grower,
yeah,
we're going to come after you to get signed up. Yeah. This thing is growing so fast in Oregon, it's scary to me. It's scary to a lot of people in my generation. We don't understand.
Well, you know, when I was forced out of work for a while, I'd go to temp agencies. And the one thing was there were a lot of companies looking for workers because a lot of people couldn't pass a drug test. They said, you have no idea how many people test dirty, whether it's for marijuana or for this or for that. You know, so they just say, hey, you know, tell us now, are you on any medications or pot or anything like that? No, just coffee. Yeah. So, You know, but the
you know, my Coast Guard license, I still run tour boat on occasion, so I maintain my license, and so it's a required random is a key word.
Right.
Random drug test.
Right.
So, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Because if you don't pass that, you're going to lose your license because you're responsible for 30 people in that boat. If you're a school bus driver or whatever the circumstances are, and I think that's the point you're making there. And you know, it gets back to the welfare question. You know, we have got to get people. You know, my family, my mom was a registered nurse. Man, she wouldn't give us anything.
Yeah.
I've never had a prescription drug in my life.
Really?
It was just pure luck.
You're lucky, yeah.
I mean, it's not, that could change tomorrow.
Sure.
And I'll gladly take advantage of modern medicine. But you know, she had this fear that might affect her kids, and you know, but if there was some need, she would have passed through that rigidness in a second. Yeah. And one of my sisters actually, that was the case. But you know, everything that we put into our systems affects us differently. Right. It's like when I got here, we were talking about, you know, what puts on weight and just the health aspects, and so we just got to keep. You know, I met a young man yesterday at the gas station in my town. Only been there a year, and a real athletic kid. I said, "Are you 6'4"? And he stood up straight and said, "No, I'm 6'5". He just graduated from Gold Beach High School, or will this spring, going into the Marines. Oh. So I made not just because he's a Marine, it could have been Army, wouldn't have mattered, but I made a friend for life. Right. I just, you know, he moved here to live with his grandma 2 years ago, actually, and parents passed. When he was about 12 or 13, I think he said. So bouncing around, you know, and finally his grandma got connected and was able to help him, and just a great kid. So I made sure, you ever need anything, you call me. Yeah. Because he didn't have a dad. Wow. You know, and I got a grandson older than him, one granddaughter older. But anyway, the point is, that's what it's going to take. I'm not saying I'm special, but I had more people helping me, you know, families, men, women, mentors, kept me in line, and I mean, school teachers. Yeah. I mean, just I made, to this day, I mean, unbelievable good friends. And so, yeah, I was going to ask you, you know where the leatherneck term came from? Well, they used to wear the leather on their neck to keep from getting their head chopped off when they fought with swords against the Barbary pirates. The Islamic terrorist of the Jefferson said, "What do you mean they're killing my Marines?" Thomas Jefferson, you know, they're cut. You know, I won't say it, but
so they wore that around their
neck. It wasn't
neck
just some their necks were stiff or something. It was, yes, great. I mean, that's a true history. History. Yeah. So. Anyways, you know, the one thing I would like to see, and I would hope that legislators, once they're in, you know, anybody in office, I would like to see various types of social indoctrination and education. We were talking about the homeless situation, and I'm pretty big and keen on trying to help the homeless and trying to raise money for the homeless. But I'm on the fence. And one of the homeless advocates said, well, it's cheaper to take care of people who are the $1 Million Murrays so we could have more resources for the women and children who are homeless. And so on that note, I'm thinking, okay, you know, I would rather see tax dollars spent in such a manner, and that's a little bit of socialism, but I'd like to see those tax dollars spent in such a manner to where it allows for more resources to go to the women and children, you know, that sort of thing. But aside from that, prior to that, the one thing I'm trying to emphasize to anybody I talk to is, you know, if we need housing, if we need to help each other, why can't it be us helping each other in some systematic, organized fashion that does not diminish the person that you're trying to help, try to uplift this person? And I feel that if we do it amongst ourselves in a very commonsensical, organized manner, you're talking about a hell of a lot of less tax dollars being spent into social programs. Yep. I'm not against social programs, I'm just against unnecessary waste, and I just think that citizens should get their own skin in the game instead of expecting, you know, government to take care of them. So, I mean, I'm one of those people that if you're not willing to get your own skin in the game, it's kind of weird or creepy to expect somebody else to be your nanny. I don't know. That's just no. I think you're really got it figured out there, and it's.
I'm an expert
really,
of my own opinion. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's there is a human dignity aspect of it. Being a county commissioner, boy, one of the first things I learned in that 18 months is the mental health aspect of what we're dealing with here. And I'm sorry, but a lot of it comes from drug abuse. And when we tell kids, you know, that it's okay to drink this or smoke that, or, you know, I mean, we're seeing, because there's so much money in marijuana. I mean, the people want the high, the growers want the profit, the governments want the tax. I mean, it's got to be regulated. And if we do that with an educational program that kids understand what the risks are, that it will, at certain ages, it will affect your brain cells. I mean, the studies are really clear. Till you get, you may have read this, but until you get 21, 22, 23, and then it's not that risky. But when your brain is developing, so it will cause some mental health issues.
Well, you know, all substances like alcohol, even too much coffee, all substances, even people like ourselves who have mature brains, allegedly fully developed brains, we're subject to altering our brain chemistry in a very negative way if we tend to like, oh, I'm going to have a couple beers every night, or I'm going to smoke some pot, or I'll take muscle relaxants every night. The reason why a lot of these drugs work and make people high is we have receptor sites on our brain and neurotransmitters that are analogous to the chemicals we're taking, like cocaine and so forth. Now, I haven't done any drugs since high school, except for prescription drugs for asthma and so forth. But I tried cocaine in high school, and I was like, "What's the big deal?" You know, this is.
See, it affects everybody different.
Well, the thing is that the high, or whatever alleged high that I got from cocaine, did not nowhere match and meet the high that I got from other things I did in life, like if you're into sports or exercising, or if you're into accomplishing things and progressing. When you have a perfectly healthy brain, because you have a perfectly outlook on life and the way to approach life, those drugs are a poor substitute. So what's sad in American culture, or not just American culture, or people, is a lot of times people want the easy way. That's why they go for the steroids. They don't want it. They don't understand that.
Good for you.
We need challenges, right? We need challenges. We need to be able to build a base within ourselves and start working towards these goals. Whether it's to become a better physical performer, a mental performer, feeling better. A lot of people just say, "Oh, just take the cocaine and feel better. I'll take the speed and have more energy. Forget about sleep. Forget about eating well." They want the easy fix, and the easy fix is generally a dead end. So, when you get into office, it'd be great if you could maybe just somehow encourage people in the communities to understand certain things, to kind of help pass on that information to each other, thereby minimizing, unnecessary taxes.
Good for you.
I mean, that's just my opinion.
And that's our generation talking.
Yeah.
Because we've been through, the deep waters and the hot sand, and that's part of life. And I had a business loss in 2003 or 4, and I lost a lot of money. And I used to joke with my buddies with this kind of loss, because it was a ton of money, and I said, "Hey, I better not try alcohol, because with my personality, I'll be a prime candidate for abuse." So, but it's sure tempting, right?
Yeah, it was.
I had other people that are saying, "I don't know." Not that I was really on the verge, but I had to be on guard.
Yeah,
and that's what I want to teach others and encourage others. And you're so
I did
right.
that for 2 years myself. I went into a spiral for feeling sorry for myself, which I'm a little embarrassed to say. So I went into a 2-year drinking heavy every day situation. And then you just got to say, come on, pull yourself up and start thinking about other people instead of feeling sorry for yourself.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
And it does make you. It does make you, when you have some loss, it does make you focus and be more sensitive to people that are. It wasn't like I had cancer or something.
Yeah.
And let's get it in perspective here.
Yeah.
I still live in the greatest country ever. I'm going to get some more opportunities, and I had a little retirement going, and so it was good enough. And I just thought, I'm not going to sit back and sleep in. It's just not my nature.
Well, you got a beautiful family, you got grandkids, you got your health, you got all these great things coming up to, challenges to kind of be creative and make for a better society. It sounds like your life is getting pretty darn exciting. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah. How do you say without trying to seemingly sounding benevolent, but to whom much is given, much is expected.
Right.
And I think I have a lot to offer, and it's because I had so much help as a younger person and had such a, I'm not saying I had an easy life, but I mean, let's face it, you get to go up and down Rogue River every day, and the prestige of a wilderness lodge, and what I can tell you is the older I get, smaller my ego gets. So.
Yeah, the more we realize we don't know, right?
Yeah.
Well, sir, our time is up, and I want to tell you, it's just a pleasure meeting you and chatting with you. So I'd be looking forward to seeing the great things that you'll be accomplishing, whether you get into Congress or not. I just know that, I'm inspired by a lot of the candidates at various levels, city on up. A lot of the people I met, I'm like, oh my gosh, win, lose, or draw, they're going to stay a force in the community, and that, to me, that's exciting.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot. See you guys next time. Yeah.